As leaders grapple with big questions about the future of Jewish community and Jewish life, I'm honored to bring together some of the finest minds and leading thinkers on what the future might look like and what we need to do to get there. We can't wait around and hope for the best. We have to create our own future because the future is starting now. Hey everybody, it's good to see you all. I am so honored. I feel like you, Tobias, you're like my brother from another mother. I don't know. I just like we got the music, we got the technology. I'm so excited to talk to Rabbi Tobias Moss this week. Rabbi Moss was ordained at Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion in New York City. And during his studies, he was a Marshall T. Meyer Rabbinic Fellow at B'nai Jeshurun, a pioneering synagogue that incorporates musical traditions from around the world. Rabbi Moss currently serves at Temple Israel of Minneapolis, the oldest and largest congregation of the city. I didn't know that. Rabbi Moss uses every language and tool at his disposal to connect with Jews from every location and generation. You'll probably see him playing guitar, mandolin, and fiddle, speaking Hebrew, Yiddish, and Spanish, creating multimedia content, including Temple Talks podcast, Bila Seder, and all things Rabbi T. Rabbi T, how are you?
I'm doing really well. Minnesota is cresting into the double digits today, so we're
you know what's funny is it's funny because down here in Florida we woke up to about 40 degrees and Floridians just didn't know what to do with themselves. I mean, just it was you. I had kids coming to school this morning with winter jackets and mittens and gloves and they just didn't know what to do with themselves. So before we get to all the questions I have for you, I want to know, where does your musical stuff come from? Have you been musical your whole life?
I've been musical my whole life, but not on a stage for most of it, or not presenting. I was started classical violin when I was 8 in the renowned Suzuki method, but as an 8-year-old, I was 5 years older than the other people starting. So it didn't give me much of a peer group. And watching these little kids surpass me even as I got better. So I quit violin when I was 16. Then when I was 18.
You did it for 8 years though. Holy mackerel.
So
wow.
It's in there. And then I picked up the guitar as I headed off to college, and as Led Zeppelin was, cramming in my brain. And so then it was multiple guitar styles. I did a semester abroad in Argentina where I studied with a classical style player. I studied some jazz. Then I got back around to mandolin thanks to the J-Town Bluegrass Breakdown. What is
the J-Town Bluegrass Breakdown? I've never heard of it.
Few have, but the ones who have are quite lucky. When I was living in Jerusalem for my year at Pardes and then my year at Hebrew Union College, I was living in Nachlaot, that great, mysterious musical neighborhood. And I put together a group of Israelis with some North American heritage, a bluegrass band called the J-Town Bluegrass Breakdown. And our fiddle player had an extra Uzi, had an extra mandolin, and so he loaned it to me. And I started picking away in my apartment. And then mandolin became, because it's a cross between guitar and violin.
I once heard that if you know how to play violin, then you can very easily learn how to play mandolin because the strings are the same, I guess.
The strings are the same, but if you have the guitar right hand of the pick,
right,
and the fiddle left hand, then you're golden. And I used to travel with my guitar everywhere, flew a million times with it. But then once I found mandolin, it was so much easier to travel with. So That's where mandolin came in.
That's amazing.
And now I fiddle on occasion.
You fiddle, you tittle, you do whatever, you play everything. That's fantastic. That's amazing. And if people are interested in your music, by the way, that you're posting it, are you posting it just on Facebook or on YouTube? Where are you posting that stuff?
Right now I'm putting out a weekly YouTube video, mostly covers, some originals of my girlfriend's music, Leah Kalish. So the YouTube account, Leah, Lea space Kalish. And we do some Yiddish tunes, but also John Prine and maybe awesome. ABBA one day, anything.
Love it. I didn't know she was your girlfriend. That's awesome. Beautiful voice. Beautiful voice. All right. So Rabbi Moss and I have kind of met, I guess, through a few different places. We've met through Office Hours, which is a show that airs every morning. It features technologists and broadcast specialists and event specialists. And then we've also been working together on the Synagogue Tech Forum. And I think that one of the things that I really love about talking with you is that you bring a whole bunch of skills to the table that I don't have. In fact, I was in After Hours the other day. I didn't have my camera on much, but I was watching. Apparently you were, was it color checking your cameras in the sanctuary or something?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was so
I can
cool.
explain.
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
Yeah, so I'm working at Temple Israel here in Minneapolis, and we've had various ways of live streaming our services with for the High Holy Days, but it was time to take things to the next level for the institution, and so I guided our installation of 4 pan-tilt zoom cameras, robotic cameras that can go any which way. And what's really been a fascinating process about it, and as a rabbi being intimately involved with it, is I think that we're able to maximize what we can do with this system because a clergy understands it. So I am able to interface between the clergy and between our technical team, what shots are possible, what transitions make sense, what looks good in the room but doesn't look good in the Zoom. How do we
Right.
bring the Zoom into the room? And so in that session, we were just improving the color of the cameras because, you can show blue to a camera and one of them will show purplish and one of them will show greenish. So just a technical nitty gritty of it. But I think you have to get, as a rabbi, I want to know 68% of everything that's going on in the synagogue. So I want to know a little bit about how the building is maintained. I want to know a little bit about the IT. I want to know a little bit about the accounting, about the budget. I think the rabbi has to really know a decent amount about a lot of things, and so this is one of them.
Yeah. Fantastic. One of the things that I really wanted to ask you about was, because you're a little younger than me, so I think you graduated a little more recently than I did. But I want to ask, just to reflect on your own education, and given that rabbis and cantors and educators are being called upon to know more and different things than, not, I shouldn't say more, because I mean, there's a lot that we need to know, but different content areas than we've ever had to know before. Do you get a sense that we are trained appropriately for what's coming next? Or I guess the next question would be, how would you, if you were designing, the next sort of set of courses for Jewish professionals, what kind of things would you include? What 68% would you want to make sure is included there?
Yeah. It's really hard. It might be impossible to build the right curriculum for rabbinical school because how do you build the right curriculum now for any industry? So many things are changing so fast. So I have as much as rabbinical students often are a little bit complainy about some of the protocols of the institution, or at least that's what I've seen.
Really?
I don't know. Maybe it was different back in your
No.
yeshivish days.
Back in my day, yeah, we walked uphill both ways in the snow.
Yes, but so I think it's a really hard task because there's no limit to how much Jewish text a rabbi could study and become more adept with, and that would only enrich their rabbinate. But also with the professional side, it's so expansive. And so at HUC in New York, I was lucky to partner with Rabbi Dr. Andrea Weiss, who is an amazing project bringer to lifer, including the Women's Torah commentary and others. And so while I was in school, we designed a curriculum for a class called Communications for the Synagogue Today, or it had a better title, but basically we were bringing in guests week to week. We had the Judaism Unbound podcast hosts come in. We had some media professionals from Auburn Seminary come in. We had all sorts of experts come into Jubilong, which is this kind of, super accessible Judaism website with lots of kind of branding attached to it. We just had all these different people come in to kind of awaken my eyes and other students' eyes to how you actually create this message out there in the world. And so that was a great part of being at HUC, and predating that, we had something called, all the names escape me, but basically we had an Entrepreneurial Fellowship. I think it was called the Founders Fellowship or something like that. But basically it empowered us to come up with a project and meet with people that could mentor us in it, and a little bit of funding to pursue it. And people had really interesting projects through that fellowship. And I also did similar fellowships at the 92nd Street Y, who do really, I think we're 10 years ahead of the game of really being digital content ready. And also at Hillel's Office of Innovation, which is also in New York.
Sounds like you sought out a lot of opportunities to really broaden your own knowledge and.
Yeah, that's why I think it's kind of, it's in this world we're entering in, the future starting now. It's more than a curriculum can account for. So it's really up to people to have a curiosity and keep learning in different forms. Also, Jewishly, I always felt that I was also someone seeking out different types of learning. So after studying at Pardes and considering the Reform Rabbinical School, the conservative one, and non-denominational one, then I was really excited to be in New York, where I could pop into Hadar. I could have I took a JTS class. I could chavruta with someone from here and from there. So I think that, you said in my introduction how I like to use every tool at my disposal. That's because to connect with different Jews, you need to be speaking their language. Yeah. And so I've always tried to be multilingual within the Jewish world of experience and commitments.
That's a lovely way of it's lovely language to as a way of framing best rabbinic practice, to be multilingual, not in Spanish, English, and Hebrew like we have to be down here in Miami, but multilingual in the same way that multi-access, which we're going to be talking about on Thursday on Synagogue Tech Forum, in the same way that of reframing hybrid as multi-access, right? Because every Jew speaks their own Jewish language, and so we need to be able to be, if not fluent, at least somewhat proficient in many, many different languages or ways of expressing Judaism. Yeah.
Well, for some people, Zmirot, singing Shabbat table songs, is core to how they connect. Yeah. And so if you're a rabbi who's never sang one of these songs, don't know any of these obscure Aramaic poems that are about fish, then you're kind of written off. Oh, you're outside my experience. Yeah. And for other people, it's, familiarity with Israel. For other people, it's familiarity with Jewish arts. So I think it's really, really crucial to, I'm not going to be fluent in all these. Right. I know like two of those fish songs. Right. I know a lot of the other fish songs, the PH, but the Dagim and whatnot, just a couple of them. But I want to know a bit about a lot. And also, this really came out of my upbringing, which I can take no responsibility for. But I was exposed to many corners of the Jewish world growing up. I was born on the Upper West Side, grew up in Tenafly, New Jersey, just 10 minutes from that famous Teaneck. And I had a grandmother who was a secular Zionist of the kind of early generation of Israeli pioneers. And my parents were very engaged, belonging to both a Reform synagogue and a Reconstructionist synagogue the whole time. Their best friends are modern Orthodox. And so I just got exposed to different corners of the Jewish world, which I think saved me. Yeah. Because it's very reasonable that many young people are like, Hebrew schools, whatever. I didn't connect with the kids in youth group. I don't want to be going to that synagogue again. I'm moving anyway. So if you only get shown kind of one part of the Jewish gem, then you're stuck on that. But I got to see a couple different angles on it. And so that's what set a foundation for me
Yeah.
moving forward.
I had a similar experience. I grew up sort of typical conservative. We went to shul when there was a good kiddush. We kept kosher in the house, but ate 12 beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun every Saturday night. Then in high school, I became quite frum. I davened at the Agudas Yisrael. I studied Aisha Torah. In college, I became sort of modern Orthodox, I guess you could say. And then I met my girlfriend who was Reform, and she pulled me that way. And then I started at the Reconstruction Rabbinical College. The point being is that when you've had when you've tasted from all the different flavors, I at least feel like they all have such beauty. They all offer such richness to the tapestry. And that's why I call myself an under constructionist Jew. I am constantly under construction. I am a work in progress. And there's something really beautiful, I think, about having that sort of broad experience that you had. You talked before about, that you said a little, but more than a little about the sort of the technological stuff that's happening at your synagogue. You mentioned 92nd Street Y, which has kind of been ahead of the game. I'm curious, where is your shul? I mean, what has changed over the past couple of years? What have you all done? Not just the cameras and stuff, but as you think about, what your congregation is going to look like in the next 5-10 years, what kind of changes have you seen and have you instigated?
I think a really special aspect of the technology is that, right, in pre-modern Jewish communities and in some modern ones, the home and the synagogue were so close. They were a few blocks away from each other. You could pop into the synagogue, you could pop out, you could invite people over for a meal spontaneously, and it was a few steps away. And I think the modern synagogues, maybe outside the Orthodox world, probably even including aspects of the Orthodox world, the home and the synagogue became two completely separate domains. Often, even in maybe Orthodox counts in this in terms of practice also, right? The institution is hardline kosher or hardline shomer Shabbat or whatever, but at home, who knows what every congregant is doing? And that applies with the specifics of kashrut, but also in just kind of what Jewish life happens at home, what Jewish life happens at the synagogue. And the technology is really a bridge to connect the two again. Because for all the reasons that Americans move to the suburbs or cities are the way they are, that's way beyond our power to affect that trend. And so there was this separation, and the technology can bring us back together. So a core example would be that it doesn't make that much sense to be in a fancy sanctuary, and to do the candle lighting, the challah blessings, the wine, the kiddush. That's been happening for a couple hundred years. But it really makes so much more sense for those blessings to be in the home. And so when you have now many congregants coming in person and many congregants coming from their home, then you can kind of reshine certain rituals back into their kind of proper domain. And so we bring in onto the projected screens of the sanctuary people from home when it makes sense that the blessing is kind of a home-based ritual. If it's something that's very much in the synagogue, someone reading from the Torah, then we keep that firmly in the synagogue, except during the early pandemic when our Torahs went all over the area. But I think there's a really exciting chance now to bridge that gap and to have the ability for people to just pop in, pop out in a way that we maybe did in a previous generation, but haven't in American Judaism for 70 years or something.
Yeah. It dawned on me that in the 80s and the 90s, the focus, where everyone's head was in the Jewish world seemed to be in family education, right? That was not everyone's head, my head. I'll speak for myself, right? That was kind of the thing. We have to get it back to the family, back in the home, da-da-da. And then all of a sudden, 2 years ago, the only place where we could really practice Judaism was in our homes. And like so many other things, I think that we've done a pretty poor. We have not done as well as we could do to help people know how to live Jewishly in their homes. Just by way of example, I talked about this last week with Sari Kapitnikov, that back in the 80s and 90s at least, because that's what I remember, synagogue said to parents, drop your kids off at Hebrew school and Sunday school 3 days a week, 5 days a week, whatever it was. Don't worry about it. We'll teach it. We'll educate them, right? Don't worry about it. We got you. And what we ended up doing is training them out of knowing how to do that work themselves. We ended up training parents to not have the skill set or the wherewithal or the courage to be their children's best teachers of Torah. And in some ways, I think that the synagogues have been doing that also. We've been saying, pray here, celebrate here, learn here, when I think we've all wanted, we just haven't necessarily done a good job of it, to say, do all of those things here and then take them home and continue doing them.
Yeah, I think that a place that I haven't made headway on, but that I struggle with is that I love creating a really rich musical service with flowing transitions and musical undertones and the right combination of speaking voices and musical voices, and then it's like no one can take this with them. If they're going camping for a weekend with their family or with a few friends, how are they going to say to themselves, oh, yeah, we can't tune into the synagogue tonight because we're off the grid somehow, but we can still open the prayer book, can't we? Well,
that is really interesting.
Really.
That is so interesting. I never thought of it that way. Right? That what we've been giving them, we haven't been giving them something that they can replicate.
Yeah.
And so we've been reinforcing that we are the owners or the professionals, right? We're the professional Jews.
Yeah. And for me, I after college, I think it was, for the first time, I got interested in having kind of my own personal davening prayer practice. I'm not sure what seeded that, but I needed to get familiar with a more traditional flow of the service that makes sense doing on your own. Like these Reform songs, which I now lead, they don't make sense as a solo practice. You need a big voice, you need the right kind of space for it, and it can be beautiful. But I really
need other
loved
people singing with you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Those shared voices, yeah.
So it took my own self-exploration to find, I can just read these pages and get connected to these words in different ways and figure that out for myself. But no one in my various forms of Jewish upbringing bestowed that upon me. And I can say I don't think I'm doing a great job yet giving that to my students either, because we do, we focus on the preparation that they're going to lead this type of service in the synagogue, and we give them a prayer book. But Mishkan Tefillah, the Reform prayer book, is every prayer book is a little unwieldy for various reasons. But the Mishkan Tefillah, which is a choose your own adventure, and it's really made for a leader. It's not really made for a kind of standard way to go through it. So
it's interesting.
So it's something to work on.
It's interesting. I felt that way about the Reconstructionist prayer book, Kol HaNeshama. I actually love that Siddur. I would never be able to daven from it because there's just too many places. Maybe it's because I'm, squirrel. I can't stay focused, and there's just too much beautiful liturgy and poetry and art and everything in there. So on the one hand, I love it because I'm not a big fan of, okay, everyone turn to page X. I don't really care if they're on the same page as me, as long as we're sharing the experience together. So on the one hand, I love the idea of giving people a book that they can make their own and find their own way through. On the other hand, I absolutely, again, I think that we have created, and I am one of them, a whole bunch of She'enu Yodei Lishols, a whole bunch of people who wouldn't know where to begin when you hand them a book like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's not meant to put anyone down. That's, if anyone, it's a critique of us and the job that we've done.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when these prayer books come out, it takes a long time for clergy to figure out
Yeah.
how do I get something from this tool, which
Yeah.
is a complicated tool.
Right.
I love saying, when I explain to students, a Siddur comes from the same root as Seder. A Seder is the order of a meal, because doesn't a Passover meal seem like it has such a clear order? And doesn't a prayer book seem like it's such a clear order of the prayers? Not so much.
Not if you've got Friday night service 1, Friday night service 2, and yeah, I hear you. I hear you. What is your synagogue? How has your synagogue been engaging folks who are not showing up on site? Right. What does it look like in your community to be a participant on Zoom or YouTube or however? I don't even know how you're getting that stuff out.
Yeah, we've made Zoom our number one spot. We restream to Facebook, and once in a while we say hello there, Facebook. But we're really trying to make the Zoom a congregational space. So, Friday night.
Do you feel like that's working? Is that, I mean, is Zoom? Are people appreciating the connection that's able to be made in Zoom, but not on Facebook or YouTube?
Absolutely. I think that there's plenty of cameras off, but there's plenty of cameras on, and I wouldn't write off the people that have their camera off either. Right. But we have people that are showing up much more frequently than they did pre-pandemic. Many show up in person one week, on Zoom the next, and we really try to call them in as just as much a part of the experience as anyone who's in the sanctuary. And I've shared this with you, I think, in another forum before. But the first moment of hybrid multi-access really feeling incredible was when there was a congregant who was turning 90, and he was at home surrounded by 20 family members, grandkids, great-grandkids, and in the sanctuary, there were tons of people that knew this family really well, and on the Zoom too. And when we spotlit the family to offer them a birthday blessing and Shehechianu, and for them to light the Shabbat candles from home, and everyone in the sanctuary could see them in the sanctuary from home, it just put it all together.
It's amazing
that we're able to celebrate this as a community, a moment that would have otherwise been exclusively private or brought into the synagogue. But it was so cozy to see him surrounded by grandkids. You could see they were about to eat dinner or what have you. And it just was like, oh yeah, this is permeating life. This is what it's meant to be.
That's so beautiful. Before we went on live, you were telling me about a session you had gone to where they were discussing sort of digital memberships or online memberships. Do you have a sense of what synagogue affiliation is going to look like in the future? I mean, are we going to still have people who join a synagogue so that they can physically show up? Is it going to be online? Is it going to be pay-per-view? What do you imagine might the future look like?
It's an imagined question. I agree.
Fair enough.
I definitely think that there's no replacing local. So no matter how spectacular a synagogue offering is coming from New York City, there's no replacing a local experience and a local sermon giver. So even though people might start spending different amounts of their digital Jewish time from different marquee synagogues or what have you, I think there's always going to be a place for a community that's really embedded in the local experience. And so that's even, it can be a hard week for a city because of the weather, or because of some event in the city, or because of a football championship gone bad. And a New York rabbi is not going to speak to the pain of being a Minnesota Vikings fan. So there's always going to be. Yeah, I'm not really a Minnesota Vikings fan, although Randy Moss and I, we're kind of cousins. But
are you really cousins?
No.
No.
I have 0 first cousins, but that's anyway.
Oh.
So he's not a first cousin; he's a second cousin. But so I think there's really something special about the local experience, both coming in physically, having an experience that you can't do digitally, but also just being embedded in the same rhythm and what have you. I think about what is the role of a rabbi giving a sermon, and of course there are endless New Yorker essays any congregant could read. There's endless pontificators and sermon givers from around the world. And so it's really a rabbi knowing their community and speaking to their community's experience that is all we got left, basically, which is great. That's so much. But I think really leaning into that. So partnering with organizations in the Twin Cities is really important to us. For our virtual Tu B'Shvat last year, we partnered with Common Roots, which is a very organic and compostable kind of restaurant, and we're able to create different Tu B'Shvat kind of food packages that we delivered to congregants' houses. And this was something embedded in the community. People know this restaurant. People know this experience. Also, when a Minnesotan experiences Tu B'Shvat, it's like -10 degrees. There's no sap rising in the tree yet. It wouldn't make as much sense for us to join someone else's experience. You still craft a local experience.
The song we used to sing for Tu B'Shvat up in Boston was the almond tree is freezing, the golden sun is sneezing. If you think that this is spring, I could sell you anything. Tu B'Shvat higia, chaka ilanot. Tu B'Shvat higia. Where's my overcoat? Yeah. So I feel
good.
that pain. I feel that pain. And yet on the other side, okay, so that's a very powerful idea. That the power of local community cannot be replicated by someone, even the best sermon giver, the best teacher who is outside of that community. There's something hyper local and powerful about having a clergy person, an educator who is part of that community. The flip side is, I may not be a good sermon giver. Or a good teacher, or a good I may be, a fantastic pastoral rabbi, but I may not be a good speaker. And it seems to me that for the longest time, synagogues saw themselves in constant competition for membership. And I don't think that's passed yet, but I think we are well on the way there, because if we don't start cooperating and working together and making the most of each other's skill set, right? If I'm not a good singer, I should not be singing for my community. I should be hiring you on Zoom or wherever to be joining and singing for my community, or bringing other teachers. I should do that local piece because I am that person in my community. I think, though, that at the same time, we are in a moment of, I hope, radical cooperation and recognizing that I don't have to do everything for my community, because now I've got rabbis and educators all over the world, literally at the push of a button, available to enrich the lives of my congregants.
Yes, this is one of my dreams for this year, is to figure out what are the appropriate, correct, enriching ways that Temple Israel can be part of the nationwide Jewish community, worldwide Jewish community, without it being, we're just trying to clergy don't want to work as hard, so we're just sending them to some other event. And
by the way, sorry to interrupt you. I'm a part of an organization called the Institute for Jewish Knowledge and Learning down here in South Florida, and up until 2 years ago, of course, we were meeting on site. Now we're doing everything digitally. But even before this all began, we went around to synagogues and we said to them, we've got a bunch of really fantastic teachers. You can't do everything in your community. Why don't you let us be your adult education platform? Like, your people can come to our programs. You can, white label, you can call it your own thing. And there was so much hesitation because clergy were afraid that congregants would say, well, why aren't you this is what we're paying you to do, Rabbi. Why aren't you just doing this? Are you just, as you said, lazy? So there's still this sort of, we can't let go. We can't let go. We have to do everything because either that's what's expected of us from others, or that's what we expect of ourselves. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
It's something we've been really thinking about. Rabbi Paul Kipnis in California at Orami has been organizing a few Saturday morning Torah studies, I think primarily within the Reform movement, but maybe it's been open to all. And he's created the structure to invite any congregation to come, easy to, throw your logo and be an official co-sponsor. And so we were having a conversation amongst my clergy partners, will our Torah study regulars feel like we're casting them off? Will they feel like, wow, this is an amazing opportunity to learn from a great scholar. This is great. And I think that if we go to this nationwide Zoom Torah study with Dr. Joshua Garraway in a few weeks, and one of our rabbis goes as well, and then the next Shabbat at Torah study, we can reflect on that experience together and say, what did you take from that? Did you like that teaching style? We can then, it's a local experience again. We
That's
went
so beautiful.
as a group,
yeah,
but it's our group going. So it's really about,
and your group reflecting on that and drawing out of it what is most relevant and most meaningful to your community.
Yeah. Or it's just a Torah study, I think. And so we usually do a Torah study and a short service. So if we meet for a short service and then transport into this, might be 250 people showing up for this Torah study, I think it's going to be a beautiful way of connecting to the nation. There's Torah study groups in nearly every synagogue every Saturday morning. A lot of the people that attend these groups, I think, are of similar disposition. You've got your academics that show up. You've got your spiritualists. I mean, I'm really looking forward to seeing the spiritualist in my community go, oh my God, at Orami in California, there's someone who's just as excited about that Ibn Gabriel poem that I once, whatever. So I'm really excited for it. And I think that we need to be on the lookout for it. And, especially I think lots of synagogues, especially a big synagogue, we build our calendar so far in advance. And so I'm really kind of scouting right now. What are a few of these moments that we can tap into something bigger and feel that we, Temple Israel, are part of the bigger Jewish world?
Yeah.
Something I don't remember where I read it, and I don't remember what century it was talking about, but I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that for the Muslim community, literary Arabic is this pristine, beautiful art form, the Arabic of the Quran, and just the literary masters of Arabic. And I'm pretty sure I read that in some era there were 50 acclaimed sermons and with perfect, beautiful literary Arabic, and preachers would give these 50 acclaimed sermons in every mosque, on whatever cycle they did. And they weren't even writing their own sermons. They were delivering the greatest hits, the most beautiful sermons written by the most incredible writers. And, we're very far off from that norm in our communities. We want to see, we think we want to see the rabbis suffer and come up with something unique. And so I don't think we're going to go all the way to that paradigm of reusing each other's materials to that extent. But when I find a great source sheet on Safaria and I don't need to assemble it myself, I can say this
Yeah.
source sheet was created by Rabbi David Paskin and I added 2 sources to it. Let's dive in. Then it's just there's resources out there. We can
Right.
really benefit from them, and our congregants can benefit from them.
When you were talking about the Saturday morning Torah studies, you made me think about the group that meets here at our shul. And I think that for them, one of the really, maybe even the most important aspect of that Torah study isn't the Torah, isn't the study, it's not the teacher. It's that this small group gets together every Saturday morning and they see each other, whether it's on Zoom or on site, doesn't really matter. So one of the things that I hope, I find myself having to repeat this over and over and over again when I'm talking with excitement about, new tools to engage people online or whatever. I am never, and I don't think any of us are ever talking about this is the next thing and it is replacing everything that came before. There's no replacing, as you said, the power of a local teacher or a local gathering or gathering on site physically in a space. These are all just additive changes. And in the same way, bringing in a fantastic Torah teacher or us going to a fantastic Torah teacher is really beautiful and really powerful. And there are also going to be times when you don't want to do that because what the folks that you're serving really want is just to hang out together. And that's beautiful and okay also. It's all good. It just seems to me that we're in this radical moment of opportunity that I don't remember being in before.
Yeah, and we'll find a new balance point, right? It won't be 100%. We're just popping into other stuff. We never join together, and
Right.
certain things will be sacred, just us, and certain things will become special as a bigger unit.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is in your future? What are you doing next? Like what's your next big here's my goal for Rabbi Tobias Moss?
Good question. Well, in my 5th grade yearbook, it said I wanted to be the next Bill Gates. And
Ooh.
so I have no shot at that at this point. But
I'm not sure you want a shot at that, but okay.
but let's see. It's a good question.
The obvious answer is marriage. You mentioned your girlfriend already. Sorry, don't mean to push you. Sorry.
No, that'll happen.
No, but
at some
professionally.
point.
I mean, no,
but professionally, no, I know, of
no,
course.
professionally.
I think that as it's a lot about helping this institution push into this direction, and that's change. And so that's been we're figuring out, when you have one more person to hire, is it someone who runs events in the building, or is it someone who runs the events digitally?
Right.
And people who are part of the institution, we have an incredible length of tenure at Temple Israel for administrative staff and clergy and educators. And so how do we move all of this forward as a unit? So that's been a big goal of mine moving into this year, as we can now start saying, okay, I feel like I just watched a documentary about octopi, about octopus, and they have these
so
tentacles.
Random.
It was really good.
Yeah.
They have these tentacles going in all different directions, but then when they snatch something worth eating, it goes right into the center and into the core. And so I'm in I think a fairly unique position, thanks to my senior rabbi Marcy Zimmerman and the board, that I was kind of brought in to be a creeping forward tentacle and seeing, is this a place that the synagogue should explore further?
Wow.
Is this? And I think I'm really privileged to be in that position. And then what I'm learning, as I'm only in my 3rd year of the rabbinate, and I've had some professional experience in other directions, but what's now, I'm really good at learning something on my own, going out.
Yeah.
We talked about that, but bringing in and feeding the core of the institution and of the synagogue and of the community is something that I'm figuring out step by step.
I also thought it was lovely what you said before, Tobias, that you want your synagogue to kind of find its place in the larger Jewish. You want to help your community find its place in the larger Jewish world and what it can contribute to the national database of teachings and inspiration and yada yada yada. That's very very beautiful. Yeah. Can you just tell everyone? So on Thursday, we're going to be gathering on the Synagogue Tech Forum, and I know that you were able to arrange Rabbi Liederman coming. Was she one of your teachers at seminary?
She was not one of my teachers. She was also a Marshall T. Meyer Fellow at B'nai Jeshurun in New York City a few years before I was, but I didn't, and I met her a little bit through that fellowship. And then, we connected there. And then as she became kind of a leader in this conversation by working on the Reform movement's effort to push the whole movement into multi-access, a synonym for hybrid, or a better word than hybrid. She's been a thinker and a doer in that role. And so that's something that that's why we invited her into the Synagogue Tech Forum, where we've had lots of people working for individual institutions, but to kind of go up a level and look off the balcony and see, what's happening across the Reform movement. Right. and at different size congregations and all of that. I will say that when you ask, what's a goal or where am I headed, I've always been attracted to like the bigger and more complicated the problem. That's what interests me. And so, another kind of career that I thought was interesting was urban design, subway systems and that sort of thing. It's like, how big of a problem can we get our minds wrapped around, and then how do you push that? So I'm excited to speak to Rabbi Liederman, who's kind of thinking one step up on this whole question.
I'll be fascinated to hear what she thinks the next big problem is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be fantastic. And thank you so much for bringing that to the Tech Forum. That's just amazing. So where can people find you other than here, listening to this amazing music? I'd play it, but I don't want us to get, I don't want your copyright to flag us.
So just, this is a side project to the rabbinical here, but also,
wait a second.
One of the projects that
Wait a second. Eshet Chayil of hip hop. I hadn't seen this one.
Yes, if any viewers haven't seen this yet, this is probably Leah's magnum opus so far, where she looks at the worlds of hip hop and the world of ultra-Orthodox Judaism and sees some commonalities in women's roles being boxed up a little bit. And so she talks about those two worlds, and it's a pretty awesome
I gotta
video.
save that. I'm putting that in my watch later. That's fantastic. Well, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but just the cover art, really, that's fantastic.
That's great. Yeah. One project that we do annually is the B-List Seder. So this was, do you remember early in the pandemic when Hollywood put out their Saturday Night Seder? Right. And with George Costanza, Jason Alexander hosting it, and all these big names, some Jewish, some non-Jewish, and
is this yours?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can show this for a second to get the effect.
Well, I have the audio off, so I think we'll be okay.
Yes. So for the B-List Seder, we said, they took together all these Hollywood A-listers, but most of these people are not making Jewish content with real depth as their role in life. There's so many B-list or C-list or D-list, but there's so many B-list celebrities that are making incredibly rich Jewish content. And so we pulled together, the first one we pulled together in like 40 hours. The first one we pulled together because Saturday Night Seder and I think Passover ended on Wednesday or something that first year of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And we stayed up all night for multiple days in a row this is a matzo ball dumplings, a little matzo ball dumpling recipe there.
This is fantastic. This is so much fun. So wait, was this sort of in place of a second Seder for your community? Is that what this was?
So the first year it was we can do this better than the A-listers.
Okay.
And built up this kind of variety show worldwide contribution to the B-list Seder. And then the second year, pretty similar, not meant to replace any primary Seder, but meant to be a content-rich, entertaining take on the Seder for any night. And we heard some people, play it at the Seder table, but I think that most people caught it during Passover, during Chol HaMoed, and were enriched in that way. And it was really enriching for me to reconnect with some of the Jewish musicians and artists I've met along the way, but also to find new ones out there that I was able to get to connected to through this. And yeah, I love the local experience and I love the global Jewish experience. Yeah. And so finding ways to embrace both.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's my takeaway from this conversation with you is the importance of both of those. So if people want to learn more about your work and the shul, where should they go?
Yeah. So Temple Israel of Minneapolis's Facebook page is a good landing spot. Also facebook.com/thatjewishrabbit, which looks like that Jewish rabbit, but that's where I share most of the things that I'm doing on there. And and Temple Israel, almost all of our programming is on Zoom is open to anyone. So definitely show up and you can chat me that you came from this source. But we love to have you as part of the community, as a drop-in, or as someone who becomes really enmeshed.
Yeah, definitely go visit the services, participate in the services. The more we can learn from one another and experience one another and celebrate with one another, the better. Rabbi Moss, I'm so grateful for your time, for your inspiration, for all that I've learned from you over the past little while that I've known you. So thank you so much. I'm really grateful.
Thank you. I look forward to many more conversations.
Absolutely. So we'll be back. Definitely join us at the Synagogue Tech Forum on Thursday. You can catch Rabbi Moss and I from time to time. It's not, I don't know if you have a set day or not. I don't really have a set day yet, but on office hours. That's in the mornings if you go to officehours.global. And as always, I invite you to go ahead and visit TorahTechGuide.com for any help that I can offer you. And if I can't help you, likelihood is I'm going to send your information over to Tobias and ask him to help out as well. And I know he's willing to. So thank you all for joining us. And I will see you. Tomorrow I've got another Torah Tech Tips that's coming up. And so Torah Tech Tips, Synagogue Tech Forum, lots of good stuff. Have the most wonderful day, everybody. See you soon.